Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha, and I'm here with a family of seekers. We're reading through the Bhagavad-gītā verse by verse, and it's like our anchor. It's like our lifeboat. This studying the Gita in this time together. I tell you guys, last night or yesterday, I didn't. My daughter, I have a 2-year old. She was like up all night the night before, and I just was not sleeping. I slept like a few hours, one of those days. And so I was struggling all day long. And it came to the evening where I needed to prepare for class. And I'm like, oh man, how am I going to prepare for class? I'm so tired. And it was like magic while I was preparing. And then afterwards, I felt like a new person, like I had just slept 8 hours. It was like so nourishing. Um, and I was pretty like cranky all day, and after that, I was like, okay, I just felt like totally back to normal. So that's the power of this wisdom. It's like taking a bath for your consciousness, and it just restores us. So I'm grateful to be here with you all and to be together studying this. And before we start, what's today? It's 7:30. Okay, I just was looking at our website last night and I noticed I had forgotten this, but today is the last day for the Guatemala trip. That the price is it's $1,200 for a week in Guatemala. After today, it goes up, or after tomorrow, sorry, it goes up to like 1350. And we only have one spot left. We only have one spot left. Unless you come with a friend and you're up for sharing a bed, then we could maybe have two spots open. But yeah, come join us in Guatemala. I was just like organizing the excursions last night, and let me tell you everything we're doing in Guatemala. We're having like a Guatemalan fire ceremony when we arrive that like really like ground us with the elements of nature and um, really beautiful. And then we'll do a waterfall hike and visit a sustainability village. And then we'll go to another little town. We're staying at this really sacred lake in Guatemala. It's like 4 hours outside of the city. It's very like rural, this sacred lake. And we're staying like right on the lake. So we'll have views of the lake the whole time. And there's lots of villages, little like villages around the lake. So we'll visit a couple of those. Um, and we'll have a cacao ceremony. So anyway, this women's retreat, and we're gonna have incredible kirtan. We're bringing Andrea's coming with us. She's teaching yoga. Another Andrea, our other friend Andrea, is coming with us. She's doing breath work. We have two kirtaniyas. We have like a full crew here. We can have our own party without even any of the excursions. So it's gonna be amazing. Please come. One spot left. One spot left.
Ratha,
And get it today. Yeah.
oh, sorry to interrupt. What are those
Go
dates
ahead.
again for Guatemala?
The 7th through the 14th.
Of
November
what
7th
month?
through the 14th.
No,
Can you come, Davy
November.
Radhika?
Not November.
Uh,
Don't worry, I'll find it when our dates will collide when the time is right, when it's meant to be, I promise. Or we'll just
I'm
randomly see each other again in like New York City.
I'm
It'll
praying for
happen.
that day that our
Me too.
schedules collide.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's Guatemala. ConsciousCollectiveLife.org. You can sign up for all of these retreats that we've been talking about, but this one is hot because we only have one spot left. Okay, let's start. Um, let's start with our prayers. Let's see, let me pull them up. One
I'm good.
second.
I have them.
Do you have them? Okay, let me just get them. Oh, okay, yes. Go ahead, Shakti. Thank you.
Om Jnana Timirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shri Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Vanchakalpa Tirubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavembhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadahara Shri Vasari Guru Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Oh, nice. Thank you. So let's get right into it. We will share. Sandra fell off there. We are in chapter 13 today. We're in chapter 13. Sorry, our friend Denny just joined us too. We're in chapter 13 and we'll start with text 13. So 1313 is where we are. And when you're ready, Shakti.
I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Okay, so up until now, Krishna's been answering Arjuna's questions one by one. If we remember in the first verse of this chapter, Arjuna asked like 6 questions. So far, Krishna's explained the field. We talked about the body and material nature. He explained the knower of the field, the soul, and Paramama. And then in the past several verses, he's described the qualities that make up true knowledge or the process to knowledge, the mindset that prepares us to perceive spiritual reality. And so now he's coming to Arjuna's next question, and that is the object of knowledge. So, what is there to be known? And I love that. I love this because Krishna asks us to think about this because whether we realize it or not, we're all searching for something. We all want to understand reality on some level. We all have this natural curiosity, and we all want to know what's true on some level. And we all want to know what will actually satisfy us. Because we're pleasure-seeking creatures, all of us. And we see that's what so much of life is about. We see this everywhere. We chase success, relationships, experiences, possessions, knowledge, even personal growth. Because somewhere inside we believe like maybe this is the thing that will make me feel complete. So the difference isn't that some people search and some people don't. Ultimately, we're all searching. The difference is where we're searching and ultimately where we expect to find lasting fulfillment. So one way that people look is they're constantly looking outwards. We're observing the world around us. We're studying nature. We investigate matter. For all us scientists out there, this is the scientific approach, and there's tremendous value in it. Science tells us how gravity works, how cells divide, how stars are formed. It's like incredible. I'm a nuclear engineer. I love science. I was like science student of the year when I graduated high school or whatever, how you get like those like people with their highest GPAs in different subjects, That was me, science, actually science and math. So I'm all about this. But the thing about science, and this is what I came to understand after, 10 years of working as a nuclear engineer, is that it tells us how something works, but it doesn't necessarily tell us why it exists. Like science can tell us how our bodies function, but it can't tell us why, even after accomplishing our biggest goals, we often still feel like something's missing. No, it doesn't answer questions like, who am I? Why am I here? What is the purpose of my life? This isn't really science. And these are the questions that matter just can't answer. So then another direction that people look, so that's outward. Another direction that people look is inward. This is where when I started having these questions after my serious quest into the scientific world, I thought, okay, maybe there's more to life than this. Let's turn around, let's look inwards. And this is the path of introspection. So meditation, psychology, self-discovery. And there's so much value here too. Learning how to understand our thoughts and emotions, it helps us become healthier and more aware and more compassionate. But there's a limitation here too. Because if we're only looking inwards without really understanding who we are, we can easily mistake the mind for the self, meaning that that's all that we think that there is and who we are. Right? And the problem with that is that our thoughts change, our emotions change, our desires change. Some days we're confident, some days we're anxious, some days we're inspired, some days we're discouraged. So if all of these things are constantly changing, then can these things really be who we are? If they're constantly changing, what does that mean? Are they real? Are they who we really are? And the Gita says they're not who we really are. The Gita tells us the mind is an instrument. It isn't the self. It isn't who we are at our deepest core. And what happens when we start on this endless quest is that we start to mistake the instrument for the person that's using it. Well, we try to spend our lives satisfying the mind while overlooking the soul. So we have to be careful on this one too. It's wonderful to be introspective and to inquire, but at the same time, let that be a stepping stone to discovering something deeper. And this is who we actually are. And people can spend their lives sincerely working on themselves and make a lot of growth, but still feel that something deeper is missing. So that leads us to the third direction. We looked out, we looked in. The third direction is looking up. This is revelation. Knowledge descends from someone who sees more than we do. So imagine you're trying to navigate a city that you've never been to, and you wander the streets, and you learn a lot that way. I studied abroad in London, and when I was doing that, I was training for a marathon, and I learned the whole layout of the city just by running the roads. So there's a lot to learn from that. Or you can study a map and you can understand everything even more. Sometimes I would have to go to that, I get home or I'd get really lost. This was before like everyone had a cell phone. I didn't have a cell phone when I did this, which is kind of funny. But you can study a map and you get a little bit more insight. And both of these approaches are super valuable. But imagine someone's looking down from an airplane. They can see the roads that you're on, where they lead, where the traffic is backed up, even the destination that you're trying to reach. Because their perspective is just broader than yours. Krishna sees reality from that perspective. God sees reality from that perspective. He knows the soul. He knows material nature. He knows why we're here. He knows what we're searching for. So this revelation, it doesn't replace observation of the external or introspection of the internal. It completes them. It helps us properly understand both the world outside us and the world inside us. And it answers the question that neither one, looking out or in, can answer on its own, which is what will actually satisfy the soul. Krishna's answer, it's not about achievement or another possession or even a deeper understanding of your own psychology. It's about rediscovering our eternal relationship with him. And this is where the search, finally begins to make sense. And I'll give you an example of how this revelation can make our outward search and our inward search clearer. This was one of the things that really kind of like when I started practicing spiritual life, I got really hooked because I was a scientist. I was like questioning everything. I was never into like, oh, new age, yoga. That's like, prove it. That's where I was. But after I went to India and I got this Maha Mantra and I started chanting on japa beads, chanting God's names for hours a day. Before that I was a silent meditator, but I started doing that for hours a day. And I just replaced my silent meditation practice for that. And I came back and I had the crazy, after 2 months of doing this, I was in a yoga class. I was doing like at the end where you do the Shavasana. And I had this like, I was in this kind of like, this state of consciousness where I wasn't like alert. It was kind of like a dreamlike state, but I was still aware. And I like snapped back to this moment in my childhood. It was like this, what do they call those? Like this recollection or this past memory of I was really small, like maybe 3 years old, and I was playing outside and I was like trying to impress my dad because this is what I did all the time to like try to get my dad's acceptance and approval, which, I never felt like I got. And so I was like really, doing things that I was uncomfortable with in the name of like trying to impress my dad. Like I'd slide down a hill and it'd really hurt and I'd act like it didn't hurt, like that. And this consciousness I had carried around with me forever, forever. I shouldn't say forever, but into my 20s. And, it really affected me of just like not feeling enough. So I was in this moment. I was like really in this moment of my childhood, this flashback. That's what it was. And all of a sudden, I just felt like I felt so much warmth and love, like almost like a hug. And I heard this voice, like you can let go now, like I love you. And it was my own voice. And it like occurred to me like how much I had been abandoning myself. It was just like this realization, this revelation, because I experienced what in that moment, I experienced what it felt like to really love myself. And therefore I realized how much I wasn't really showing up for myself. I was doing all the things I was abandoning myself constantly. And it was like such a revelation, and at that time I was in that unhealthy relationship that I've talked about quite a bit. And that was like, a month later, I got out of that unhealthy relationship that had just been holding me for 5 years. It was just like all these things in my life just started to like, my perspective just started to change. And ever since then, let me tell you, I'd say about once a month now, at least, I have a dream of like reliving some kind of traumatic thing from my childhood or my 20s, but from like a totally different perspective that completely changes, my perception of it in a healthier way, in a way that's more loving and compassionate. It actually just happened like 2 days ago with something. I can't remember what it was now, but I wake up feeling like, oh my gosh, I actually get that. And sometimes I'm not even aware of these memories until they come and I'm like, oh wow, I see that totally different now. Where I thought that I was completely unlovable or, now I see it's quite amazing. So this happens when we lean in, when we seek guidance, from someone higher than ourselves. They give us this clarity so that we can better understand the outside and the inside world. They like put it all together. Does anyone want to share anything before we move on?
I think it's so beautiful, Radha. Thank you for sharing that. No, I don't know what I don't know. And I can convince myself all sorts of different things. And sometimes it is a matter of having that outside perspective, that 30,000 foot view, to really bring things to a place that makes sense, because I will always not always hurt myself, but I will put myself down because that's where I'm comfortable. I had been going through a period of confusion in my life, lots of things happening, and I found that I would right away go into a place of shame. Every job I had lost, everything I had done to other people, it would just feel like a Rolodex of shame would come up to me. And I'd be like, not, I needed to not feel, uh, you know, it was very difficult for me. Now, it wasn't Krishna that came to me. It was a sponsee, it was a therapist. She said, "Oh, that's because you're completely comfortable with shame. So when things are out of control, your body and your mind goes right to your comfort zone." And I went regressed back to my childhood and even young, and so shame was there. And I finally said, "I don't want to feel shame." And I was able to sit in front of my altar and pray and really say, try to surrender this. I mean, I'm not that person anymore. I give this to you, Krishna. You take it. You know how to handle this. I can't handle this anymore. And I haven't gone there since then,
Mm.
which, it's that it's almost like really trying to surrender and allow things to happen, so that I can move forward, if that makes any sense. And so your message is so clear to me. So thank you so much for this morning. Thank you.
Yeah. Wow, beautiful. And I would say that it is Krishna who came to you. Krishna comes to us in all different ways, all different forms. He comes to you through a friend, through a like-minded friend who's coming from a place of love and trying to lift you up. That's Krishna, and giving you that clarity, and that's available to you because you looked up. You're looking up. I know you. I like that's your whole. That's the way you live is looking up. So when we're only looking out or looking in at our internal landscape, we're missing that secret sauce to really connect everything and see things clearly. And that's another perfect example. Thank you, Nancy. Shakti.
Whew. Um, yeah, this is a subject I'm very familiar with. Um, a lot. So I was thinking of actually writing a book about my life, because my life, when I talk to people about like my life, they're like, "Oh my God, you need to tell people about that," because my life, like I've been married 3 times. Um, I come from a very dysfunctional home. My father's first wife committed suicide, on and on and on. Um, and I had a sister that passed, which made me like this. Just so many things, and it just sounds like it's like how that doesn't even sound like it's a real life. Doesn't even sound like when I talk about it. It doesn't sound like it's my life. It sounds like I'm living in a dream in someone else's life. And but I actually started a podcast last 2 weeks ago, and it's really just about from the mat to the heart. It's just from my experience in yoga to my experience here. And it has brought up so much stuff for me because I'm starting right from the beginning. Like you said, Radha, when you were little and you were looking for that attention, I'm that same person, like hey dad, like did you see, and really because there were things, just because of the circumstances in my childhood, I was not seen. I was, oh, here, look, put on a pretty dress, look beautiful, da da da. But I wasn't seen, I wasn't hugged, I wasn't loved, those things were not happening. And my parents, due to my just circumstance, they didn't have the capacity. They didn't have the capacity. And I didn't know that. until like I think you even like recently, not recently, but when you talk about like your father and different things, there's a lot of things that I didn't know. Um, but even if I did know, it's not what I felt. I
Mm.
felt ick. I felt it was horrible, and I felt sad and just never good enough to be a part of anything, you know, and no matter what I did. And so I so relate to what you're talking about. And it's I do similar things like you were talking about, Nancy, and sometimes I'll just do it sitting right in place. Sometimes I feel stifled and I can't even move. Like the emotion has gotten me and I can't move, and I just need to sit and just talk to Krishna exactly where I'm at and ask
Mm.
to please, can I surrender? Please, please let me surrender. Please help me, you know. And yeah, I mean, this is the only process that has given me some uh, some way to forge ahead, so to speak.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so thank you for
Nice.
sharing your vulnerable story. It allows me to feel like I can be vulnerable too, you know.
Mm. Beautiful. Thank you. Yes, this path gives us the ultimate clarity and fulfillment. And the next thing we'll cover in this verse is what is the knowable? You know, what is the actual object of knowledge? So we know it's not, we're not going to find it looking out. We're not going to find it looking in. We have to find it looking up. But what is it? And in this verse, Krishna says Brahman, you know, and there's acharyas interpret this different, but we're going to go with Brahman here. We'll go with what Prabhupada's interpretation. Brahman in this verse refers to the individual soul, the Atma. And throughout this chapter, Krishna's been helping Arjuna distinguish between the body and the self. We all have an individual soul, that part of us that is spiritual in essence. And and this is what he's describing as the object of knowledge, what we're actually looking to find, the eternal being who exists beyond the temporary body. And we'll see Krishna doesn't stop with simply understanding the soul. We'll see as in the coming verses, understanding the soul naturally leads to us understanding the super soul, God in the heart, and ultimately God as a person. So, in other words, knowledge isn't just about learning facts about ourselves, it's understanding our eternal relationship with God. And this is why Krishna says here that by knowing this, we taste the eternal. Because when we understand who we really are, not just this temporary body, not just this mind, that's our vehicle, that's our instrument in this life for the soul to shine through. Because what we actually are at our essence is an eternal servant of God. And when we start to really understand this, our entire perspective on life changes. Our entire consciousness is changes. And we taste the eternal. Well, maybe our consciousness doesn't change because our consciousness is always pure, but our perception of it. And this is beyond cause and effect. He says this in this verse too, beyond cause and effect, which is, if we really think about this deeply, it's hard to eat for us to even perceive because everything in this material world operates on cause and effect. Everything we experience here has a cause, a tree from a seed from another tree. Parents give birth to a child, those children grow up and have children of their own. It's just like this big chain of cause and effect. But as we get more thoughtful in life, as we start to look around and we see all this cause, we start to think, where did it all begin? It's like the chicken or the egg. Where did it all begin? And the Gita tells us that God isn't just another link in the chain, but he's the source of the entire chain. And some people get just like satisfied with science. This was me and all my friends too, because I had very like scientifically minded friends. And it's like science explains how the universe works. So where does God fit in? And it's like you can't prove it. So I'm not interested. But we should understand that science and God are not competing explanations. The laws of nature can explain how things work, while Krishna explains why those laws exist in the first place. And it's just a deeper, we just have to go the next level deep. Science explains how things work. Krishna explains why we even have the laws. Like a beautiful symphony. Once the composer writes it down, an orchestra can play it exactly as written without the composer standing on the stage conducting every note. In the same way, Krishna has established the laws that govern this universe. And the consistencies of the laws don't remove him. It reflects his intelligence. So when we get just satisfied by science, we're not going deep enough. And when we convince ourselves that science is all we need, it's really our conditioned mind. Not wanting to see anything, not wanting to look upwards, not wanting to see anything greater than ourselves, which is okay, but we should understand that it's limiting because by definition, we're limiting. By definition, we're finite. We're so small. And God is infinite. And we need to connect with something that is bigger than ourselves if we really want to expand our perception out of what we're capable of. Again, when I'm running around the London roads, all I can see is just directly what's in front of me. If I want a little bit more, I need to look at a map. But if I really want to, I need to go in an airplane. Then I really see what's everything going on in real time. So that's us. We have to get to this point where we look up. We don't have to, but if we do, we will get the most clarity and fulfillment. And that's what Krishna tells us. Why does this matter? It matters because by knowing the truth, we taste immortality. That's what he says. Not just because we memorize philosophy, but because we understand who we really are and who God is. And this changes the way that we live. And it changes even the way that we die. Because this is beautiful. In Vedic tradition, when someone's approaching death, family members often ask forgiveness and offer forgiveness. And this is true for our culture too. But the reason that this is so encouraged in Vedic culture is because they know that unresolved resentment can keep the mind absorbed in temporary concerns. And so the goal isn't to pretend that painful things never happened, but it's to free the heart. We know those of us that have held grudges, which is probably all of us on this call, when we're seeped in resentment, the heart is not free. The heart is suffering. So we want to clear that. We want to remove major distractions. And not just so that we can feel peaceful, because we know peace is nice when you've been suffering. But even better than peace is connection, is love, is relationship. So when we free the heart and we remove distractions, we can really connect with God. And this is practical for us all, wherever we are, because there's always going to be distractions. Some will deserve our attention, some won't. And our goal isn't to eliminate every distraction, but it's to give each one only as much attention as it deserves, so that our primary focus remains serving Krishna. And as we go through our spiritual life, we get more and more expert at this. And not even necessarily because we're trying, but because naturally we're more attached to Krishna and less attached to that which was so much disturbing our mind before. It's okay if so-and-so said this about me and I disagree, and no problem. Let them think what they think. Let my I wanted a promotion for years, hasn't happened, no problems. I'm not going to get upset about it. I'm not going to let it take up more inventory in my mind than it really deserves. It's a practice, it's also the fruit of a steady spiritual connection, because naturally we become more attached to Krishna than the things of this world. And that's the real win. That's the real win in this life and the next. So this verse is really an introduction. Krishna's answered Arjuna's question, what is there to be known? What's the object of knowledge? But he hasn't finished describing it. And so beginning with the next verse, Krishna starts describing the Supreme in extraordinary ways. That's what we'll get into. He's going to tell us that the Lord has hands and legs everywhere, eyes everywhere, ears everywhere. That he's both within and beyond everything. And so these verses just stretch our understanding, because we see that the absolute truth isn't limited by the categories that we use to understand the material world. Sometimes we think that's all there is. Sometimes we want to think that's all there is because that's what makes us comfortable. Because having to lean into something that we can't perceive is very uncomfortable. But we see, and the beautiful thing about spiritual life is that it's not just like jumping into a blind well. We build faith incrementally, and we do that by leaning into the process and observing the transformation of our own hearts. And in that, it gives us more and more faith. Like every time I have one of those dreams, I think, oh my gosh, Krishna is amazing. I never had any of those dreams before I got into spiritual life. But that's what happens when we ask. Krishna reciprocates to the degree that we're really sincere. So this verse opens the door, and now Krishna is going to invite us to walk through it. Should we do one more verse here together? 14. Let's see. Just looking so I can share my screen. Shakti, when you're ready, do you want to read this verse for us, 14?
Everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads, and faces, and he has ears everywhere. In this way, the supersoul exists, pervading everything.
Thank you. So today's a little bit more philosophical than it has been the past few days. I hope you all are still with me, because it's getting really sweet. So after introducing the object of knowledge in the previous verse, Krishna's now going even further. And it's a little bit of a strange description when we read it. Like, how can someone have hands everywhere, eyes everywhere, ears everywhere? It's like, is this poetry? Like, what is he talking about? And Krishna's describing something that's actually really hard to put into words. He's describing the super soul, the Paramatma, God in the heart. So each of us have an individual soul, an essence of who we are, and that's spiritual, purely spiritual. And then next to that individual soul is God in the heart, watching everything that we're doing like an observer. And unlike us, unlike our individual soul that's just limited to our body, Krishna isn't limited to one body. Like right now, I see only what's in front of me. I hear only what's within earshot. I can only be in one place at one time. We're really limited. But Krishna isn't. When he says his ears are everywhere, it means that, his eyes are everywhere. It means that nothing escapes his vision. When he says that his ears are everywhere, he hears all the prayers, all the arguments, all the things. His hands and legs are everywhere. It means there's nowhere he cannot act. So it's Krishna's way of helping us appreciate that the super soul accompanies every living being. Because sometimes we think we're completely alone. Like maybe we're driving in the car by ourselves, or we're lying awake in bed at 2 in the morning, and no one knows what we're thinking. That's been me the past couple nights with my baby. I guess I'm not technically alone with my baby, but maybe we're struggling with something we've told another person. That, but the Gita reminds us that we're never actually alone. That God is always with us in the heart. He's always witnessing. He's always accompanying us. He's not a distant observer. He's our closest friend. And this verse also gives us a glimpse into how really advanced spiritualists see the world. Because most of us see separate objects, different people, different places, different situations. An advanced spiritualist sees God's presence everywhere. And it's not like God is suddenly more present, but it's because their vision has become purified. It's like when you put on glasses for the first time. Has anybody ever done that? Like realize that you had, I remember this when I was like in seventh grade. I learned I had bad vision and I put on glasses for the first time and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the world. It's like everything just becomes sharper and clearer. And not because the world has changed. The world didn't change. My drive home didn't change. I remember that drive home. I was with a friend actually. And I remember thinking, wow, this is what your house looks like. No, but our ability to see it has changed. And so devotional practice isn't about bringing Krishna closer because he's there. He couldn't be much closer. He's right in our hearts. But it's about removing the things that keep us from recognizing his presence. So this verse, it's not trying to give us an anatomy lesson about God. It's inviting us to shift our perspective, to begin seeing that everywhere we go, whatever we're doing, whoever we're with, God's already there. And this is an incredibly comforting thought. If we could just imbibe this realization alone, that God is always with us, it would change the entire way that we live our lives. Should we do one more verse or do we have some discussion? What do you guys want? Do you want to discuss or do you want to do one more verse? Turn it on gallery so I can see. What do you think?
I'll share a little bit for a moment, if I
Oh,
may.
please share.
Um, there's always so much to like think about when I hear live or when I get to listen to these podcasts, and so much always resonates with me. But um, going back to the beginning where you were talking about, seeking and how we're all seeking. And I think well, I'll speak for myself, although when I do share, I feel like it's something that we all have in common, that seeking externally and trying, you to often talk, and I love the way you put it, like trying to fill that God hole from the outside in. And I look back on my path and my journey, and um, often people who don't know my whole story have this idea of it not being as much of a struggle as it has been, and a struggle that it still can be. And I always find that very interesting, but I think it really has less to do with me and my my stuff, versus the fact that, it goes back to that old saying that, it is in the darkness that I've found my way back to the brightest light. It is through the darkness that I realized and remembered who I am. And, and through that external search, which was never working, it's just, whatever I decided to allow into my life was just self-harming and detrimental, led to that then internal sort of exploration and, 40 years on and off with different therapists and different approaches and different programs, and all of which really were meant to be, and placed there for a purpose and a reason and multitudes of lessons. But it really wasn't until, that one person who Krishna spoke through, who suggested that one thing that led to this, yoga, that led to a dear friend that I'm sure has been connected to me throughout lifetimes, that led to a drum circle with, my teacher, that led to bhakti, that, one little pebble that Krishna tosses into the river, the lake that leads to the ripples, to the ripples. Did I really remember? And it is, I don't want to say it's a constant struggle. It's as much of a struggle as I choose to make it on a daily basis, and but you had said something just now about, you know, that God is always in the heart. And what I've really been trying to focus on, especially since I'm going back to work in a couple of weeks, is seeing God in everything. And I use the word thing very generally, from my cat who's sitting at the, screen door looking at the rain, from my, teenage daughters who come home super cranky and tired, to my husband who leaves his dishes, and the material things, to the birds that like all of it. And if I can see through that lens, that really truly God is everywhere. It's just like you said. I also remember getting a pair of glasses. I was a catcher in softball and couldn't catch the ball. Duh, I couldn't see it. And, so it's putting on the lenses and seeing the world through the heart that isn't easy work, but it's like the best work in the world. So
Hmm.
thank you all for being vulnerable, for sharing your stories, sharing your hearts, and so grateful, Radha, that you've put this together in a way that really can bring something that is at a high level to a level where every day, every moment, we can do our best, because that's all we can do. Mama, to live. I love that. Exactly. To just live our fullest and best, consciousness. So thank you all for being here. It really does help.
Hmm. Yeah. That's how we should be when we are separated, when we feel separated from God. That was really beautiful, Devi Radhika. It's so nice to hear from you and to have you live, because we don't get that opportunity. So it's really nice to learn more about your story and your heart and witness its transformation. And, that's the point of this, all of this material existence. We think the point of this material existence is to like extract as much cheap pleasure as possible in the moment. But it's actually much bigger than that. It's a hospital. It's a hospital, and we're all sick. We're all materially diseased. We haven't realized what will actually make us happy is connection with source. And that's what it's all trying to direct us back to. And we just don't get it. We're just kind of confused. The other day, I got a message. Veda messaged me and was like, "I had a dream about you. Are you doing okay?" It's like, "I'm doing okay." And I kind of shared some struggles. Like, I have to do a lot of work for this, and I don't really want to. It's just like mundane things. And he said something like, yes, the material world is a place of distress, or something really simple like that. And it's like, yeah, we shouldn't expect, that everything is going to be just like cherries and rainbows. And that's not the point of it. The point of it is to turn us back to God. And each of us require something different to turn back to God. But to the degree that we are searching that, and the more sincere we get in our quest, Krishna will put it there for us. And even if we're not sincere, then we'll still get it in harder lessons. But that's ultimately what the purpose is. The, and yeah, that's really nice. Thank you for sharing, Devi Radhika. Anybody else want to share? We have a couple new. If Amy or Alankara want to share, we'd love to hear any reflections or wisdoms, additions, subtractions. No pressure though.
Yeah, I can share something. I think it's really interesting, and I really uh, loved hearing, how Krishna has entered everybody's life and have inspired them some way or the other based on their situation in life. It's not like, one um, fix for all. So it's really interesting. And yeah, Radha, I was thinking one interesting thing that you had mentioned was, how you were super scientific before, and then you um, look for all this, like logical reasonings and solutions, and then you found this Mahamantra in India, and then it just helped you a lot. But at the same time, I was wondering that how, a scientific person could really understand this complex subject matters, which requires a lot of faith in first place. Like, okay, there is this blue boy, he's lifting mountains in Vrindavan, and he's present everywhere. So what was the first step to accepting that, and then continue to practice this process? Yeah, as a
Yeah.
scientific person, I think you can. I think I would love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah. Trust me, I did not believe that God was a blue boy initially. Not at all. In fact, I was bored reading the Krishna book. Um, but the mantra, the meditation on the mantra was really speaking to me. And and I was in a place in my life where I was really hurting. So things were, again, I was in the hospital and I was diagnosed with stage 4, you better do something about this or you're gonna go. And I was forced, I was brought to my knees like many of us in spiritual life, we get distressed. That's one of the reasons we come to Krishna. So I was distressed, and this mantra saved my life. And I didn't vibe with all parts of the tradition at all. And there's still parts of the tradition that I am not like I can't completely lean into, or I struggle completely but I leaned into the parts that I could because I saw that it was transforming my life. And I didn't, there was nothing else that was, that I had, that had brought that kind of connection and shelter in my life, even though I searched for it in everything else. So I leaned into what did, and that was a mantra for me. That was chanting. That was japa meditation. And then little by little, it became easier to accept other things because faith, it's not something we just jump into. It's something that is built over time. I mean, if somebody is like one day, doesn't even know that, doesn't even know any philosophy, and then they hear it, and then the next they're like, oh, I totally buy into all of this, Govardhan Hill, and it's like, okay, it's probably not that super rooted. Could be, maybe they have that kind of some scar, but a lot of times that's not really how faith is built. It's built over time. We have to lean in, we have to try. So it was a very scientific process for me. It was very scientific because that's the kind of person that I am. That's what I need. So I tried it on, and I leaned into what was really helpful, and I waited, and I see now, even just last night I was reading something that I was like, "Oh my gosh, I actually get that." Something that before sounded really weird to me that I like couldn't I just wasn't quite ready to accept. I was just reading something last night. I was like, "Wow, that's actually amazing." So it's a process for sure.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Does that make sense? Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else want to share? Okay, my friends. Well, if we have no other shares, it was such an honor to spend this Thursday morning with you all. Thank you for coming live, and thank you for those of you that are listening after. And let's continue this quest for truth, fulfillment, connection, and ultimately love together, because that's ultimately what the heart is searching for. And we have to look up to find it. And if you haven't realized that yet, don't worry, you will. Or you'll suffer. I mean, those are the options.
Thank
Appreciate
you
you all.
all. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna. Alankar, you can find the recordings of previous sessions. We're on YouTube, and all podcast platforms. You can go to Gita in Action, and you'll find this is like our 184th episode. We've been at it for a couple years now. So, yep, that's where we are. Gita in Action, all podcast platforms. Okay, thank you all.